Hey everybody, this is Daniel. Welcome back. Today I want to kind of break out the equipment, make a video, which I haven't done in a long time. And I want to talk about Black Panther Wakanda Forever because it's coming to Disney Plus. I'm recording today, January 31st. So it's actually coming out tomorrow on Disney Plus for Black History Month, which was a smart move on their part. And when we talk about Wakanda Forever, I'm listening to people talk about it online. And I think people are really missing some key parts of it. And I think they're taking some things in the movie the wrong way. The main things I want to focus on in this discussion today is I want to discuss the importance of burials and funerals in this movie. And I want to talk about the role of colonialism and anti-colonialism. So first, let's talk about the funerals because there's 2 funerals in this movie. But there's also 3 burials. Now, let's just say right up front, spoilers, plentiful, spoilers, plethora, abundance of spoilers. I just wanted to make sure I told you up front. Okay, got that done. So in this movie, we have 2 funerals. We start with the funeral of T'Challa, Chadwick Boseman. And I think when we deal with that funeral, I think we are simultaneously processing the grief of losing Black Panther. We're processing the grief of losing Chadwick Boseman as the Black Panther, and then we're processing the grief of losing Chadwick Boseman. And I don't think those are the same. I actually think those are 3 different modes of grief. And I want to just kind of highlight them briefly. Losing Black Panther for the universe is a big deal. The story, because he was their protector. And now other countries and forces are going to try to take advantage of them as a result. You see that later on in the movie, particularly with colonial powers like France. But also, we lose Chadwick as Black Panther. And this is something that I think a lot of people, particularly white reviewers of movies, don't understand. Because most white people get to see themselves in all sorts of characters. If you're a white person, you can see yourself in a lot of different franchise leads and franchises like Star Wars, my favorite, the MCU, of which this is a part, Lord of the Rings, you name it. You can see yourself in those characters. The Witcher, it goes on and on. Just think about your favorite movies and TV shows. If you're white, there's a lead character you could typically see yourself in. But Black people have not been able to always see ourselves in these characters and as the leads. And that's mainly because the people in charge, white people, have long decided who run the studios that Black movies with leads don't do well abroad. They've said this for generations. This is not new. This is not recent. And so we have been hard pressed to see ourselves in these stories and in these characters. And that's important not just for people's entertainment and their feelings, but it has a political and sociocultural effect. Okay, maybe that's not a word, but you get what I'm trying to say, which I'm going to touch on in the colonialism part. So it matters for Black people to be able to see themselves in Black Panther, T'Challa, Okoye, Nakia, Shuri, all of these characters. And then to lose him in Infinity War, to get him back and then lose him again, but in real life, and lose all that he was doing, and then have this legacy when we miss him still. And then, like, when you see all of these burials happening and these funerals, so you got the funeral of T'Challa, and also the funeral of Chadwick, because this was also a cathartic experience for all of us because we're still processing losing Chadwick, the human, the person, the man in real life. And I think the movie is in many respects a collection of funerals, not just one Black funeral, but several. Because the first funeral is T'Challa. The second funeral comes later on with Queen Ramonda. But in the middle of that, there's another burial. So see, there's 2 funerals, but there's 3 burials. And the third burial in the middle is the burial of Wakanda, when Namor and his people fight against Wakanda and bury it underwater, which leads to the death of Queen Ramonda. And I think talking about these burials is really important because this is a movie of funerals. This is a movie of suffering and pain and dealing with that pain. And not only burying those you love, but having to bury your emotions and still proceed forward when the world won't let you rest. Because that's the struggle of Shuri. That's the struggle of Queen Ramonda. That's the struggle of M'Baku and Wakanda. They don't get a chance to bury their dead, mourn them, celebrate their lives, and then do it peacefully. Because the rest of the world is trying to pick at the carcass while they're still alive and trying to take everything that they can from them and colonize them and destroy them if at all possible, which they admit that's what they're trying to do. This gets into the second aspect of the movie that I think is really important, the colonialism. Because if you're not familiar with colonialism, if you haven't read a lot of books on it, you might think that the way France and all the other countries in the United States are portrayed in this movie is just Marvel looking for bad guys, maybe adapting some, comic book material. And while all that's true, there's also the component that this is a Ryan Coogler movie. And with him and his cast and his crew and his team, there's more being said here than just what the uninitiated might think. This movie is telling you how colonial powers act when they get the chance. Because the United States, the CIA in particular, says in this movie that they want to destabilize Wakanda, which is basically what Killmonger was doing, because he was trained by the United States Empire to do this, but that's a different conversation. So the CIA wants to destabilize Wakanda, and other countries are sending in their armed, special ops to try to take vibranium from this country. They have absolutely no regard for the sovereignty of Wakanda. They don't care. They don't give a damn. If they could, they would take all the resources and they would leave Wakanda in ruins and in squalor. And the movie is trying to tell us that this is how colonialism works, and this is how it works today. Because for those who say, well, it's just a movie, what do you think's been done to Africa for hundreds of years? What do you think the transatlantic slave trade was? What did you think all these military excursions in Africa were for? To take resources, just like what they're trying to do with Wakanda. And so the colonialism leads itself to where Wakanda, which is an isolationist nation, looks at all the things that these colonial powers have done and say, oh, no, man, we don't want to be affiliated with them because we know what they'll try to do to us. But the other thing is, and this is where I think people kind of get the fight between Namor's people and Wakanda wrong, is they say, well, I don't really like that they were fighting each other. I didn't want to see black and brown people fighting each other on screen. And I get that. But you missed the important factor, the important thing, the most important part of the fight, which is why they're fighting in the first place. And so these two nations are fighting each other, not because they dislike one another, but they're fighting each other because they know how the outside nations are, and they know how they will utterly destroy them if they get the opportunity. Which is why the way the movie ends is great, because ultimately they could be allies instead of tearing each other apart and then these other countries coming in and just picking off the scraps. So I just wanted to talk about those main points because I think we're going to enjoy Wakanda Forever. Some people didn't enjoy it. That's fine. This is a cathartic movie. This is a movie that gives you the opportunity to process your emotions. And just like there's multiple funerals in the movie, you might need to watch it more than once to be able to purge those feelings and then to be able to celebrate and look toward the future, which is what the movie highlights at the very end. You see the literal future of the franchise and of Wakanda. And so I can understand if some people don't like it. I'm not really here to critique whether you like the movie or not. I just wanted to say that I think there are some things in the movie worth paying attention to and taking a deeper look at, especially when you look at Coogler, his cast, his crew, this team of amazing people who have made these movies and had such a difficult job to do with losing Chadwick Boseman and still going on to make this movie. I think it's a triumph, no matter what anyone says, that this movie got made, that this movie was coherent, and that this movie was entertaining and insightful. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and have a wonderful day.